I'm continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I'm reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around just a little bit as I move along. Now, right now, we are just going to read out the last few verses of 1 Kings chapter 11. This is the end of the reign of Solomon. So we've had all these... We've read about his luxury, his fall into idolatry, and then the adversaries that God raised up to vex him in his latter years. Now we have this. This is picking up 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 41. And the rest of the acts of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the acts of Solomon? And the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David, his father. And Rehoboam, his son, reigned in his stead. Nice, simple, sweet. We get the end of Solomon. Let us flip now to 2 Chronicles. This is chapter 9. We get the last three verses here. Pick those up in verse 29. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, first and last, are they not written in the book of Nathan the prophet, and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer, against Jeroboam the son of Nebat? And Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. Now, I know this isn't much in the way of reading, short video, but note the source material that is referenced here. Kings talks about the book of the Acts of Solomon. And then Chronicles talks about three different records. The book of Nathan, the prophecy of Ahijah, and the visions of Iddo the seer. Now we know Nathan was the prophet during David's reign. And I mean, he was a prophet at least by the time of the affair with Bathsheba, which most likely was when David was about 40, 45, and he was still there when Solomon was anointed king. That gives us an approximation about 25 to 30 years during David's reign that Nathan was the prophet. And he was obviously the prophet for at least a portion of Solomon's reign. But the reason why we have these other two prophets here, Ahijah the Shilonite, he is at the end of Solomon's life. He's the one that we read about to tell Jeroboam that he would be king over 10 tribes. And later on, he will again appear to condemn Jeroboam. So he's there at the end of Solomon's reign and the beginning of Rehoboam. Iddo the seer seems to have been filled in the space between the two. So we get Nathan, Iddo, and Ahijah. That's why all three of them are mentioned here, because they covered different periods of Solomon's life. And so the compiler who wrote Chronicles takes on all of these sources, draws on all of them to tell the story. The guy writing Kings seems to primarily use the book known as the Acts of Solomon, which would be a written record of generally starting at the beginning of his reign as king and ending at the end when he died. Which is why we have nothing about the childhood of Solomon. Because we don't really have to do much about the childhood of any king other than David. After David, we only really know about kings when they become king. And that's because that's the way records were kept back then. But we have these, and, I would love to find a copy of these old books. Let's read the book of Nathan the prophet. Let's find it. I would love to. This shows us that these are the passages that show us that what we have in the Bible is not a complete account of all the words of God. God gave words to many prophets that we don't have anymore in the Bible. Now, some people may think the Bible is sufficient by itself, but the Bible itself tells us that there are many books, many works of Scripture that we do not have anymore. And I think it would be fantastic and fascinating if we could find copies of these ancient scriptures. Anyways, we'll leave that here. After this, I will be finishing out the Proverbs and then doing these songs, the Song of Solomon, before moving on to the rest of the histories. So, I will see you there.